The Tinder Swindler Con. June 2019. Shimon Yehuda Hyatt, Simon Leviev, Mordecai Nissim Tapiro, and Michael Bilton got off a plane that had just landed in Greece. Laying in wait to arrest him for fraudulent documents, Interpol agents swooped in and took him into custody. Yes, him in the singular. Shimon Yehuda Hyatt, Simon Leviev, Mordecai Nissim Tapiro, and Michael Bilton were one and the same. Shimon Yehuda Hyatt used these names as aliases in his criminal exploits, but the one he would become most famous for is the Tinder Swindler. Welcome to Bad Things. The story of the Tinder Swindler is as comical as it is a cautionary tale. Number 1. Shimon Yehuda Hyatt. Shimon Yehuda Hyatt was born in 1990 in Ramat Aishanan, Israel. At the age of 15, he moved to Brooklyn, New York in the US with friends of his family. While in Brooklyn, Hyatt's first known con was committed. The family he was staying with accused him of misusing their credit card. Later interviews established that he had been committing minor fraud throughout his teenage years. Hyatt moved back to Israel and was charged with theft, forgery, and fraud in 2011. In 2010, Hyatt started working as a babysitter for the Yakir family in Tel Aviv. Hyatt had been hired through a babysitting agency. The Yakirs received a notification from their bank informing them that someone had attempted to cash a check for $9,500. Charges were laid against Hyatt, who had stolen the checkbook and tried to withdraw money. He skipped his day in court and fled Israel to bordering Jordan. Hyatt used a forged passport under the name of Mordecai Nissim Tapiro, and from Jordan fled to Europe. In 2012, he was indicted in absentia by an Israeli court and charged with theft and forgery of checks, as well as child neglect after leaving the 5-year-old unattended. Number 2. Finland. While in Thailand, Mordecai Nissim Tapiro, the name Hyatt was using to evade capture by Israeli authorities, met an unnamed Finnish woman. He claimed his credit card had been misused in Finland and asked her for help. Hyatt lived in her flat for 6 months and kept telling her the money he owed her was on the way. At the end of April 2015, another Finnish woman met Hyatt on Tinder. Tinder would become Hyatt's new place for finding his marks. A mark is a victim or prospective victim of a swindle or con. Hyatt eventually suggested they combined their credit cards so he could have access to hers. According to the woman, Hyatt swindled her out of more than $46,500. In May 2015, Hyatt met another Finnish woman on Tinder. Hyatt would initially pay all the bills in the relationship. He told her he wanted to live with her and start a family. Falling for the promise of starting a family and believing Hyatt was in love with her, she gave him money and access to her credit cards. Hyatt told her that his accounts had been blocked by authorities and he would repay her when it was sorted out. This lie would become his go-to story with all future victims. Hyatt even went as far as to convince her mother to part with her credit card numbers. Hyatt's time in Finland had run out when he was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison for defrauding the women. When arrested in Finland, Hyatt had a virtual con man's go bag. He claimed he was an Israeli man born in 1978 and was found with 2 forged Israeli passports, 3 forged Israeli driver's licenses, 2 forged Israeli flight permits, and 5 forged American Express credit cards. Number 3. Back to Israel. In 2017, after serving a reduced sentence in Finland, Hyatt was returned to Israel to be recharged and sentenced for his 2011 fraud and child endangerment case. Nobody is sure how, but Shimon Yehuda Hyatt legally changed his name to Simon Leviev and fled Israel and justice again. He presented himself as the son of Russian-Israeli diamond oligarch Lev Leviev. Lev Leviev is a billionaire businessman, and Hyatt's con was to claim that he was the wayward son, who was given money by the family to stay away from the business. Hyatt made his way back to Europe and back to his Tinder swindling ways. Number 4. The Con. Of the many women Hyatt conned, only a few have come out publicly and shared how he managed to swindle them out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. The author Aaron B. Powell puts it perfectly by writing, "Sometimes we want to believe something so badly that we allow ourselves to be taken advantage of." Hyatt, with his use of Tinder and Instagram, had found the perfect con. He curated a fake lifestyle of flying in private jets, driving expensive sports cars, and dining in only the most expensive restaurants. He meticulously posted these events on his social media accounts as a background story to lure in potential victims. Once a mark was identified on Tinder, he would meet up with them and put on a display of his lavish lifestyle. He would pay for dinners, invite them to travel in his private plane, and slowly suck them into a true love scam. Hyatt would act as if he had fallen in love with them, speaking of marriage and starting a family. This, according to the victims, would happen within a few weeks. After the victims were emotionally invested in their relationship, Hyatt would slowly introduce the next phase of the con. Hyatt would mention that he had many enemies due to his diamond or arms-dealing businesses, depending on who his mark was. These enemies could freeze his accounts, track his whereabouts, cancel his credit cards, and even threaten to kill him. To validate the danger narrative, Hyatt would be shadowed by a bodyguard named Peter. Hyatt would ask his female victims for money or to open lines of credit for him while he was dealing with these enemies, and would reimburse them as soon as the threat was over. The victims, blinded either by love or the perception of wealth curated by Hyatt, would open these lines of credit for him. This money would be used by Hyatt to set up his new mark. At some point, Hyatt was thought to be running 3 to 4 marks at a time, each woman paying for the other's time spent with him, living the jet-set life. Number 5. The Downfall. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. William Congreve. Norwegian Cecilia Fjellhaj swiped the wrong way on Tinder in January 2018. She had just matched with Simon Leviev on Tinder. The screen swipe would change her life and that of Hyatt. Within days of making contact on Tinder, Fjellhaj met him in the Four Seasons Hotel in London on January 14, 2018. For months, the 29-year-old graduate student who was living in London believed they were a couple and spoke to him daily. After their first date, Hyatt asked Fjellhaj to join him on a business trip to Bulgaria on his private jet. This is where Hyatt imprinted his facade of being a millionaire heir to a multi-billion-dollar business. Fjellhaj and Hyatt essentially had a long-distance relationship, and unbeknown to Fjellhaj, this allowed Hyatt to work on other marks when not with her. Hyatt solidified the true love scam by telling her that he loved her and that she was his future wife. Within 4 weeks after their first date, Hyatt inserted the next part of the scam. Hyatt told Fjellhaj he couldn't visit her in London. This was due to ongoing death threats he had been receiving from his enemies in the diamond industry. His security team had insisted that he not use his credit cards due to them leaving a digital footprint that would enable his enemies to track his location. Convincing Fjellhaj of this perceived danger, Hyatt asked her to link her credit card with his details, and he would remunerate her as soon as the threat had passed over. Hyatt went as far as getting Fjellhaj to view apartments where they could start their life together. 12 weeks after their first meeting, Hyatt sends Fjellhaj pictures that would thicken the enemy's plot. Pictures of a blood-soaked Hyatt and an injured Peter, his bodyguard, claiming they had been attacked, caused immense anxiety for Fjellhaj. After numerous requests for money from Hyatt, Fjellhaj started to feel like her relationship with Hyatt was one-sided and only about finances. In less than 2 months, Fjellhaj had opened 10 lines of credit, including an Amex card, which Hyatt maxed out for $224,220. Hyatt had made numerous promises to pay her back and had reneged on those promises. Fjellhaj, feeling that something was wrong, invited Hyatt to meet her family in Oslo. Hyatt had bankrupted his mark and had moved on to the next. Cecilia Fjellhaj cut all contact with Hyatt and reported him to the British and Norwegian authorities. Hyatt's con would ultimately come crashing down when Fjellhai took her story to VG Online magazine. They would track Hyatt for months and uncover the stories of more women scammed by Hyatt. The most comical and satisfying story is how, in an ironic turn of events, the predator becomes prey. Aileen Charlotte, figuring out that she was being conned and wanting to recover money Hyatt had loaned from her, sold Hyatt's clothes worth thousands on his behalf. She kept the money and turned Hyatt into a desperate and emotionally needy mess. After being arrested in 2019 by Interpol, who got a tip-off by one of his victims, Hyatt was sentenced to 15 months in prison. Hyatt was released after only serving 5 months of his sentence. Hyatt is wanted for various fraud and forgery offences in Norway, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and Spain. Hyatt is also being sued by Leviev for claiming to be a member of the family. Hyatt is a free man. Thanks to his victims who have come forward to expose him, Hyatt's ability to use the same scam again is doubtful. But who knows, he might come up with another one. Thank you for watching Bad Things. Hit the subscribe button, like button, and notification bell, and share our channel for our up-and-coming true crime videos.